computer to press record. All right, you'll probably see on your screen that we're talking about now, part of the podcast. We'll edit it out. So whenever you want to start, and then I'll just do a brief intro, and then we'll just jump into wherever this takes us.
Hi, I'm AmyK, and you're listening to From the Heart with Ed Hart.
My guest today, as you've heard, is AmyK Hutchens. I met Amy about 6 years ago. We were just talking that she came out to the Center for Family Business at Cal State Fullerton and did a workshop for our family businesses. I'm a little intimidated today to be interviewing someone who teaches people how to be master communicators, because if you've watched or listened to any of these podcasts, you know that I am not a master communicator. Maybe one of my top 5 strengths in StrengthsFinder, but that's just because that's how I answered the questions. But AmyK is an author, she's a speaker, she's a coach, she's worked with large companies like Starbucks, and I've got the list here, but she's been featured on Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc., USA Today, US News and World Report, and much, much more. I took a look at your bio, Amy, on your website, and she has her official bio, and I'll point you there, and we'll have Amy tell you a little bit later how you can find her. But the official bio talks about how she's a Vistage International Speaker of the Year. She's coached and taught at workshops all over the world. But what I really like is your informal bio. I like on your website, she talks about how she's a super cool aunt. And I'm guessing that's probably true. And as you listen to her here in a little bit, you'll understand why. And all 4 of them are your favorite. I really like that as well. That's being politically correct, if there ever was politically correct, right? How'd you break your nose at the North Shore at the Bonsai Pipeline? I'd like to get into that in a minute. So anyway, I just want to welcome my good friend AmyK Hutchens. Amy, it's great to see you again. It's been a while. And so what have you been up to? You look like you're still traveling the world, but probably traveling the world the way the rest of us are, right here on Zoom or on our computers.
Exactly. Everything is virtual now, which in some ways makes it far more efficient.
It does. It cuts the commute time down. It took me about 30 seconds to walk to work today.
So I was adding up the hours the other day, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I will get 3 weeks of my life back.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. All that time that we have just in the car. Yep. And I don't know how long your commute is, but mine's 19 miles and it can take 2 hours in Southern California.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm 45 minutes away from the airport, and now I'm down to a 30-second commute unless I stub my toe, and then we can double it. So,
that's right. And then those swear words you use in the traffic, you're just using them on your walk to your office at home.
Exactly. So thanks for having me back, Ed. This is great. It's so good to see you.
It's really good to see you. So a lot of places we can go today, and I just want to, I've got a structure of it, but rather than the structure, you have a new book coming out. You're all over the world speaking. I would love to just kind of go back in time first and just how does someone arrive at the profession that you've arrived at? You teach people how to communicate. The books that you've written and you're writing, the seminars that you've done, the one you did for us 6 years ago, people come out of there having a much broader and better understanding and better tools on how to communicate with their loved ones, their employees, and so forth. Tell me a little bit about how that career came about for you.
Well, I think that it really probably goes back to something that we all have in common, and that is that we were given this voice box with no instructions how to use it. And so I'll just be really vulnerable for a second. You know, I was the classic of I said something and then I'd be like, "No, probably shouldn't have said that." What did I just say?
Yeah, can I pull those back? Yeah.
Seriously. Or you'd think of the clever comeback like 6 hours later, and it was like way too late.
Yeah.
And so I really, I think that sometimes where our greatest pain is our greatest gift. And for me, my greatest pain over the years is not being able to use my voice, whether to draw a boundary or to stand up for myself or to ask for what I really wanted. And so the better that I got at it, the more I realized this could be the gift that I give back. And so it turned into a career. It turned into an absolute calling. And here we are, 19 years later in my own company, a 28-year career. And I'm just fired up by helping people to get better at their own communication skills.
Do you remember a point in your life where you kind of shifted from that I'm not owning my own voice to, wow, I need to teach people how to do this, because maybe you had a mentor or a lesson or something that clicked? You're nodding like you do. I'd love to hear it.
I think there were several inflection points. I think that one was early on when I started to teach, and I saw it with children. And then I started to do corporate training, and I saw it with adults. And then in my own personal life, when I wasn't practicing what I preached, I felt that pain viscerally and emotionally. And then when I would take what I learned and how to get out of it, and I applied it with my coaching clients, it sounds really schmaltzy until you meet me and you realize I'm so fired up, and it is
Yeah.
actually my calling. When I can see somebody get their marriage back on track, or a relationship with their kid back on track, or become a leader that people really do want to follow, that's what makes me want to serve. It makes me want to get better. And I will point out, Ed, this is not a one and done. Like, I am
Right.
still on the learning curve.
Absolutely. So you hit a hot button with me. We have two grandsons that live here with us. As we speak, my wife is downstairs homeschooling them, like the world is doing with their kids and grandkids right now. You talked about kids, and a topic that has come up a lot in conversations and phone calls and Zoom calls and so forth that I've either been on or I've hosted in the last month has been, how do we talk to our kids about this? We're in the heart of the COVID crisis right now. At the time that we record this, and certainly at the time we air it, we still will be. So it's very relevant today. What suggestions do you have on how, and I know it's probably circumstantial or case by case, but any advice you can give to parents, or in my case, grandparents, on how to communicate with with the kids around us of what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, and I think that I'll come from a slightly different perspective. I think that one of the things that's really important, especially as we communicate with children right now, is that we use a magical phrase called a part of me. And a part of me removes absolutes. So you can say to your grandkids, a part of me is nervous, or a part of me is uncertain, or a part of me is stressed out. But what you're saying is that not all of me is stressed out, or not all of me is scared. And that leaves wiggle room for certainty, calm, confidence, love, respect, belonging, inclusivity. So even like if you've got a kid at home that, let's just say, misbehaves because they
Sure.
too are feeling it all, right? And so instead of saying, oh, I'm disappointed, or oh, I'm angry, saying a part of me is
Because
disappointed.
that puts you in the whole entire, all I feel is anger.
Exactly. And so it leaves all this space for other possibility and other emotions, but it also allows you to connect with children that their feelings are real. So a lot of times parents want to dismiss their kids' feelings. So they'll say something like, well, you don't need to be worried. We have this covered, or you don't need to be stressed. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That doesn't validate what a child is going through. So it's really important to validate first.
How would you tie in listening? Obviously, listening is half of the communication. There's the person talking and the one listening. Any active listening skills or techniques? And I don't want this to get into like a black and white technique full conversation unless you want to go there. And certainly we do want to hear some techniques because this is what you do for a living. How do let's just talk to Ed for a minute. How do I become a better active listener with my grandsons during a time like this?
You don't speak with your agenda first. So if your child shares something or your grandkid shares something, your very first response is about what they shared, not your own agenda. So it would be something like, just give me a first name, Ed.
Makua.
Makula.
Makua, yeah. Hawaiian.
That makes sense.
There you go. Yeah.
I hear you. I understand. But you take their first name, so you let them know that they have your undivided attention, and then you say, I hear you. I understand. That makes sense. And then you can make your point, or you can add another layer to the conversation. But what we often do in turbulent times and not, we like compete. It's like Ed, AmyK, Ed, AmyK, instead of stopping and saying, oh, Ed, I'm listening.
Interesting. What observations, I have one, and I'd love to hear your take on it first. What observations do you have as far as how communication may have changed in the last 4 weeks, just interpersonal communications and conversations? Certainly, you mentioned you're 30 minutes or 45 minutes from the airport. You're not exactly driving to the airport and getting on airplanes right now to go teach, but you're doing it in other ways, I know. But just in the day-to-day conversations with clients or friends or colleagues, how has your conversation changed or your methods changed in the last 4 weeks while we're in this crisis?
Consciously, they've changed. So I will tell you that one of the things that I'm really encouraging both friends, family, and clients to do is to be much more thoughtful in your word choice. And so there are high energy and there are low energy words, and just to be aware of that. So to walk in and say, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm confused, those are really low energy words, and they can change the entire dynamic, both at home or at work. And so I'll say, just be more aware of, it doesn't have to be Pollyanna, it doesn't have to be sis boom bah, but high energy words can be as simple as, I can do this, deep breath, one step at a time. I got this. So just be more aware. The other thing that I'll tell you too, which we've done personally, I've been really very conscious of it, is making sure that I don't start conversations with headline news.
Hmm.
So often, we'll walk into the living room, the kitchen, the family room, and we'll say something like, oh, did you see the numbers? Or, oh, did you see what's going on in Italy? Or, oh, did you hear about the UK? And that really distracts from the better, more
And they
productive.
stop listening. They're thinking about the numbers, and whatever you say now could just be blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So really to avoid that.
Awesome. Excellent. I appreciate that. And so transfer that now into communicating with our teams. I work with 65 family businesses around Southern California and others in other parts of the world, literally at this point. Messaging for leaders to their employees. I think a lot of what you just said is critical, obviously. Don't come in with the headline news. But what approach would you tell one of your executives right now that you're working with on how he or she could better communicate to not feel like, hey, the world's on fire? Because in a lot of cases it is. So how do we kind of tone that down a little bit so that we don't create panic?
Well, I think it's about being factual and empathic. So to be credible, you need to be able to say, here's the data and here's what we're going to do in response to it. So to not over exaggerate it, like, oh, and or to come in and be like, oh no, we got this, it's fine. Like, let's not. So it's not to be on either extremes. It's to be right in that center of, here's all the information that we have. Yeah. Here's what we're going to do as a thoughtful response. And then to communicate strategically, financially, culturally, operationally, but then to remember too, that people really need to feel included right now. Now that's not anything new. You're sort of like, duh, but a really great way to do it is to start a question with how might we? So it might be that you start a meeting on a Zoom or a GoToMeeting or whatever platform that you're using, and you start the conversation with this overarching question, how might we?
I'm writing that down. I'm taking it from you.
Say it again.
I said, I'm writing that one down. I'm going to borrow.
I love it.
Borrow that one from you. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite question frameworks. So no matter what it is that you're doing, whether it's in response to COVID-19, whether it's response to culture, whether it's response to financial metrics, it's just the how might we, and then you fill in the blank. And what it says is you're open to possibility. We're all brainstorming, and I want your ideas. Like, we're going to create this decision and we're going to problem solve together.
Yeah. How did you, when this all hit, and I'm not going to keep the whole conversation on COVID-19, but because it's what everybody's talking about now, and I really feel like it's important that we go head on into it rather than avoid it. Yeah, it's absolutely relevant, and it's not sky it's falling, it's tools and techniques. So with that in mind, I'd be curious I can tell you where I was, but I went into a consulting project with a client, and that client didn't allow us to bring our own personal phones in. And so I left my phone in and I'm listening to the news going mostly sports talk because, my world is sports for the most part, and grandkids. There's speculation maybe the Golden State Warriors might be playing a game in front of an empty arena tomorrow night and things like that of what could happen. I go into this client for a few hours. I come back out. NBA season's canceled. Major League Baseball's canceling. Soccer. All these different sports are just like not playing again until this is done. Everybody is probably going to need to get home. So when that news broke, or as it was transitioning, I'd love to hear how you talked with your clients, because your clients, it doesn't require face-to-face, obviously, but what was the messaging that you had to your clients as you were letting them know, hey, I might have to cancel a few events. I might have to miss a few meetings. The world's shifting. How did you go about that? Because a lot of people are still in that, how do we service our clients? The new normal has been 4 weeks old now, but we're only 4 weeks into this.
So my first question was, how might we respond
go.
in a way that serves the attendees or the constituents or the members, just depending on the demographic.
Sure.
But it was how might we respond thoughtfully together? And so I had some clients that immediately went virtual, like just immediate. I had some that were like, can you postpone to 2021?
Yeah.
And then we had an internal conversation here with the AmyK team. And that was, how might we respond thoughtfully? And so we made a decision almost instantly that we knew people were going to have to communicate and lead in a way that they'd never been asked to before.
Right.
And so that was when I put together the first webinar, and this is not a pitch, it's free. You can still go on our AmyK.com and watch it. It's on the homepage.
And feel free to pitch, by the way, too, if you want.
You say it again?
I said, feel free to pitch all you want as well, by the way.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's totally free. But it was sort of like the first thing, like we all want to answer, how do we best serve? And so that first night, after having talked to a handful of clients who were again giving me feedback and what they were going through, then my next question was internal. And I think this is really important for the people who are listening today. The next question is, how do I play? How do I serve through this? And I really do think serving is how you get your way through this.
Yeah.
And so we did that webinar. We pulled some of the best information, but we knew that it was information that people were going to need in real time. It was sort of like an emergency response webinar.
Sure.
And then I ended up doing 37 coaching calls last week for free. And the reason that I chose to do them for free was because how can you get on a phone call with integrity and talk about laying people off or furloughing and then like bill? So that was
and then send you an invoice. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It just felt wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
So those were like the two responses that we had, is like, how might we respond thoughtfully together? And then how might we respond thoughtfully as a company? And then that internal true mindset question of how might I best serve?
Yeah. How are you, just on a personal note, how are you, an extrovert like I am, I'm guessing, from knowing you and seeing you on stage and so forth, how are you staying in touch? The obvious ways, but I mean, do you have a process, or do you have a strategy for how you're just staying in touch with your loved ones, especially those that you can't go see right now?
Yeah. So I have an every other day phone call with my parents.
Okay.
We were doing all the grocery runs for them so that they don't go anywhere.
So they're close by.
Yeah. So they're about 40 minutes away.
Which they might as well be 40 hours away right now, right? Because you can't go to their house. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we're doing the family dinners. And I mean, I love to cook, but I'm usually not home Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the girls said the other day, which just sort of like was really heartfelt, and again, as strange as all of this is, and as tragic as all of it, and we've lost loved ones. I mean, this has been real. We have felt this.
Wow.
The girls said the other day that one of the best things that they love about all this is that we sit down as a family every single night, and they're like, and the food is great.
And the food is great. Mom's really cooking. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty. They didn't realize you had it in you, right?
So it's good.
Yeah, and that's good. And I'm guessing that you probably have a fair share of conversation about world events and mostly what's going on with school and what's going on with life, and just try to balance it out more than, and you're probably just listening to what's on your mind.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we asked. So that's I don't even try to be specific. We'll sit down, and the very first thing that I ask after we talk about what we're grateful for is, what's on your mind? So we start every dinner with 2 or 3 things that we were either unexpectedly grateful for that day or surprisingly grateful for that day, just to shake it up a little bit. And then I go right into, okay, what's on your mind? And you would be amazed at the conversation. I know more about these girls in the last 2 weeks than I think I've known in the last year.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I love how on your website and in your books and in conversations and everywhere I've watched you talk about, and we're leading into this right now, life happens one conversation at a time.
It does.
What do you think? Put yourself in the shoes of your kids for a second. How do you think they feel about having a mom who is a master communicator? How has that benefited them? And you get kind of the, oh my gosh, here we go again. Mom's psychoanalyzing or communicating with us.
Yeah, they're not always thrilled, Ed. So,
of course, yeah.
So I'm actually, they are not mine biologically. Okay. So I met them years ago. So they've been in my life for a really long time.
Yeah.
And their original mother, their biological mother, passed away when they were really little. And it was just tragic. Yeah. And one of the things that I told the girls early on was that you have a mother. You don't need another one. Your mother is beautiful, and she's brilliant, and she's amazing, and she loves you so, so much. Sadly, she's not here.
Right.
And so that was really a great dynamic that we set from the very beginning. And I share that from a place of vulnerability, but I think it's really important that we're not always serving in a conversation in the role that we originally intend. And so when you show up ready to engage, when you show up ready to serve, rather than trying to always control, but more connect, you'll find that your conversations are far more real and authentic and profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. You get more out of it when you don't go in, as you mentioned earlier. And again, you're not going in with an agenda, which makes me want to kind of scrap my notes right here and just continue.
That's different. I mean,
no, I know, but still.
I'm totally about a planner. So let me be clear on that. I believe in planning. Sure. I believe in planning and setting yourself up for success. I totally believe in that. Yeah, but when you kind of set your, it has to be this way, like it can only be this way, when you set that aside, sometimes you get more than you ever bargained for or asked for, which is great.
And when emotions are involved, you have to just kind of be willing to listen and improvise and shift your sails as you go. Because
Yes.
you may say, "How was your day?" And they may want to go into, "I saw this news story. 10,000 people in America have passed away at the time of this."
Yeah.
And now suddenly what you might have had as your agenda, if you had one at all, out the window. Now it's
Right.
just like,
And be
how do we?
mature enough to let that agenda go.
Yeah, exactly. Not always saying, "Okay, but I got to get back to this." So yeah, I've noticed that with my kids and my grandkids as well. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your writing. I mean, I know that I love to write, and writing is, I think, somewhat of a gift that I have, but it's not something that I put as much time into as I probably should, because I would rather be out with people. So how do you balance what you're doing professionally with going out around the world speaking with still writing these best-selling books that you're writing?
I don't find writing to be particularly joyful either. But
Yeah.
what I love is when something really works. And so I very much write like I speak. And you'll find that my books are almost like having a conversation with me.
Hmm.
So it's fun to write the stories that are successful. I take a lot from my clients' lives anonymously. I take a lot from my own. And sometimes I'll even do amalgamations. Like there'll be this theme of like 5 clients that I've worked with. So I'll make up a character and make those, all those themes into one.
Combination of
Um,
5 people into one. Yeah. Super
yeah.
character. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love it. And I think what I love too is the fact that there's something very intimate about either hearing the book, and I read mine. So mine are audible and I
Hmm.
actually do the narration. So having that person in your earbuds is very intimate, or even sometimes
Yeah.
just sitting down. And I'm old fashioned. I still love to buy books. I mean, I
Me too. I like the
love
hard
to buy
copy
books.
book in my hand. Yeah.
So, and that to me is also still that very kind of personal, intimate experience that you have to reflect, evaluate, and predict about your own life. So I love, and the book isn't even out yet. Like I
Right.
think I just mailed you your preview copy yesterday.
Yep.
Like I was literally opening books the day before yesterday, mailing them out. But yeah, I'm so excited.
Well, I got the PDF and I've read most of it, so
Okay.
I've read enough to know that I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
Can we backtrack though before the book before? And I apologize that I don't have it right in front of me. I probably should put my glasses on. The Secrets Leaders Keep. That was a bestseller
Yeah.
of yours as well? I'd love to hear. That's a previous book, obviously. That's not
Yes.
the one we're talking about coming out later this month, which we'll get into. Secrets Leaders Keep. The title right there makes me very curious.
I've had the privilege of being a coach and a think tank facilitator for CEOs around the globe for over 2 decades. And we always say it's lonely at the top.
Hmm.
And it's not lonely at the top if people would actually share their secrets and realize that we are more connected than we realize, that we have more in common than we realize, and that the same things that are keeping you up at 3 o'clock at night as a CEO of your business are the same things that are keeping me up.
Sure.
And so what I did in the Secrets Leaders Keep was I took the 14 most common secrets that I'd had from all of my coaching clients. I made up these characters, 7 men, 7 women, all different industries, different situations, but I showed you how hard leadership is. So this is not the book like, hey, rah, rah, this is how you do
Sure.
it. This is just to say you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I've often heard people say that if a leader says it's lonely at the top, they're not really a leader, because if they're at the top alone, they didn't lead anybody up there with them. So,
That's good.
if you're at the
That's
top of the
good.
mountain by yourself, you didn't really lead anybody because no one's with you. So can you share one or two? Are there any that just jump out at you that maybe I know that when I've written, there's usually a story or a topic, and then I've taken that and I've then, done a deeper dive into that to create more of the book. Was there one or two things that really hit you? You thought, wow, I need to flesh this out more and really put this into a book.
Yeah, I think that one of them that was painful, but I thought was really helpful to share was that so many times we have to leave our hood behind. And so somebody in your childhood will tell you that you weren't good enough, or you weren't smart enough, or maybe you weren't mathematical or creative enough. And then you get to be this adult, and somebody will come along and they'll be like, hey, Ed, who are you? Like, how did you get to be like the facilitator of a podcast and this incredible leader? And there's somebody from your past that can't believe
Yeah,
that you
you're
got
doing this.
success.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that I say in that book, The Secrets Leaders Keep, is that you have to let go of your hood. I mean, who you were at 5, who you were at 13, thank goodness,
Mm.
does not define
Yeah.
who you're going to be. But you carry this baggage of other people's baggage and other people's insecurities and limitations with you. And you have to let go of that.
Yeah. So you probably work with kids, you work with couples, you work with CEOs, you work with people from all walks of life. Do you have a favorite? Is there a one thing that's like, if I get this work, I'm taking it every time because this is my wheelhouse?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's so much the age or the generation or the gender or even the industry. I think it is the heart and mind of the person. So the only person that I really am like, is the one that's like, I'm perfect and I'm not
Hmm.
coachable. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to work with
That
you.
person didn't call you to begin with. They were told to call you, or they were pushed to
Exactly.
call you, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so where I tend to thrive are really successful people
Hmm.
who have some area of their life that's either not successful or they just can't figure out how to expand the legacy or have the next chapter of their life evolve.
Yeah.
And so I love when people are curiosity and intrigued and want to grow.
Yeah. Now, as you know, I do a lot of work, almost all my work with family businesses.
Yes.
Most of the work I do with family businesses has to do with, not most, but much with succession planning.
Yep.
Obviously, you have a lot of cross-generational issues that come up in succession planning. You've got the greatest generation, which in many family businesses, the 80-year-olds are still working.
Yep.
And then you have the Gen Zers or whatever's after Z, and you have everything in between. Can you talk a little bit about fundamental differences that you've seen? Maybe let me just talk about, for example, baby boomers. I was born in 1964. I turned 56 literally yesterday at the time of this airing.
Hey,
Thank you. I wasn't looking for that, but I
that's
didn't know how to.
okay.
I got myself there. I was like, how do I get out of this without make it look like I'm wishing for a happy birthday message? And a lot of the people that I lead and the students I teach are, in their early 20s, so they're probably even younger than millennials now. I guess that's Gen Z or
Yep. And
Gen
we don't know
Y.
what the next
Yeah.
one is yet.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. What's after Z, right? I guess we go back and Gen AA. We don't want to call it that.
No.
Certainly. Yeah. That's a whole other topic of conversation. So let's just take those two generations, for example, because the majority of the people that will be watching or listening to this are either baby boomers or millennials. How would you say are the fundamental ways that you would coach the two to communicate with each other? And I
Well,
know
I
I
think
know we can't do this in 5 minutes, but
no, but I think we can, but let's at least be slightly provocative. So
there you go.
one of the things that I think is really important to remember is that if we can remove the judgment, we can look at the differences objectively. So if you're, let's just expand that range just a little bit. So if
Okay.
you're a baby boomer, well, let's go a little bit further. Let's go to traditionalists and let's like the greatest generation. So let's just say you're over the age of 70. We'll go with that for a second. Your idea of feedback in the workplace at the height of your career was nobody's making eye contact with you. You must be doing a good job.
Yeah.
And then the baby boomers came along and they're like, well, no, I'd like some feedback. Like I'd like an annual performance review. And the traditionalists were like, you're nuts. Just fly below the radar. Don't ask for anything. And the baby boomers were like, no, I want annual
I'll
feedback.
tell you at the end of the year how you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then my generation, I'm a Generation Xer, so I'm 48.
Okay.
And I came along and I was like, well, I don't want to find out that I dropped the ball in February in December.
Yeah.
I want quarterly feedback.
Mhm.
And then millennials came along and they're like, that's not enough. Like, I want weekly coaching. And then, this generation is like, I want a text message. I haven't heard
Yeah,
from
tell
you
me
like
now.
in 20 seconds. And I'm like, I left you a voicemail. And they're like, I don't even listen to those. So it changes. But what's fascinating is that human behavior, human wants haven't changed. We want to feel included. We want to feel heard. We want to feel understood. We want to know that we belong. We want to know that we're respected for our differences. We want independence and autonomy. And then the variations of all of that are how we respond. So here's where I've cautioned my clients the most. If you're over the age of 40 and your instant reaction is, oh, those millennials, they're lazy, then your thinking is really shallow and limited, and you're the only one that's going to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that we can't broad brush everybody because individuals are individuals.
Yes.
But there's a reason why communications classes are taught and why I get asked a lot by anywhere I go, hey, can you teach how I can communicate with that other generation? And what I've noticed is that it's not just, the Gen Xers and the baby boomers and the millennials, but it's the next generation, regardless of their music is too loud. The way they talk is too different. The way they communicate is, social media now, or, it just really depends on there's always just that gap, I think, between the generations, regardless.
Well, and the oldest generation is always like, oh, this world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Exactly.
And
Back in my day, we did it this way.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that's really important to do as a leader is to question your own stories and to question the assumptions in your head and to challenge them. Now, are there themes and are there threads that we talk about? Yes, but I think that at the end of the day, we could say that for the millennial generation, you're going to have some lazy louses and you're going to have some rock stars. For Z's,
Absolutely.
you're going to have some lazy louses and you're going to have some rock stars. My generation, we got some lazy louses and we got some rock stars. So just be very careful about the stories that you tell yourself, because you'll often prove yourself to be right or just entirely myopic.
Mm-hmm. Are there lessons? I'd be curious. Are there lessons that you've looked at in the younger generation? Let's go millennials, for example. The brilliance of millennials. Obviously, they always say if you need something figured out technologically, go to a millennial, go to someone, 20 or 25 or 13 or what have you. What would you say are some of the not so much inventions, but just some of them, maybe just for you personally, some of the life lessons you've learned where you thought, wow, I'm so grateful. The girls, your stepdaughters, or
Mm-hmm.
those that are others of generation younger than you, lessons that you've learned that you're just thinking, I'm so grateful that I had this deep conversation with this person.
Yeah, I think the fact that we have people that are continuing to push for rights globally,
Mm-hmm.
that are still saying that we have a civic responsibility to behave in certain ways. So I think what was alarming to me at first is that when I reflected upon what the girls have experienced, they've had everything from 9/11 to school shootings to
Yeah.
mass shootings to war on terror to now this pandemic. And so when we talk with them, it sometimes surprises me that they'll say, yeah, going to school, most days we're scared. And it's like, okay, my generation, most days we weren't scared.
Yeah.
We had fire drills every now and then in
Yeah.
case Russia. But,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
it's created again, and this is where I find fascinating. You could look at it so negatively, or the story in my head is their resiliency and how much they still get up and they still do things and they still figure it out and they're still motivated and they're more sophisticated about world knowledge. They're less sophisticated in their comfort level of interacting with folks. I've noticed that.
Sure.
Just different communication. But I'm only talking about my kids. So again, getting them to go up and ask a host or a hostess at a restaurant, not now, but
right.
pre
5 weeks ago.
pandemic,
Yeah.
it would be nerve-wracking to them to talk to a total stranger and look them in the eye. So there are pros and cons, but then you realize, well, then those are things that we can teach them, and there's things that they can teach us.
Yeah. Yeah. My world growing up was Fullerton, California, and more precisely was the district of the high school that I attended, and the walk from school to campus and the baseball team and the guys on the team with me. And really just my circle right there. There wasn't social media. Telling you and people listening things they already know, but yeah, because of these phones and because of the computers and everything else, it's literally the world. I found out 10 minutes before we went on this podcast that the city of Wuhan is now open. The airport opened today.
Correct.
When I was a kid, I wouldn't have even known that. Maybe on the 6 o'clock news and probably tomorrow's newspaper. And I probably wouldn't even have paid attention to that. My dad would have told me on the weekend when we were out doing the lawn together of something he learned on Monday. And now it's just like instantaneous.
Current events was not important to me in my world when I was growing up. Now, my parents were well-educated, very progressive, very liberal.
Part of it is just we age into it, yeah.
But as a kid, I was like, read the newspaper maybe. So these kids are absolutely more informed, I think, than any generation. The flip side of it is that they have more comparison condition. They're on more anti-anxiety prescription drugs. And that's not a judgment. That's just a fact.
It's our world.
And so I think that as the world continues to evolve, and it will, it just means rather than being so judgmental about it, the first thing that we need to do is just to be responsibly thoughtful in understanding the why behind it. And then how do we help this next generation? I think that, again, you can come in and you can talk about all the craziness of the pandemic and have a lot to talk about, or we can look at the good that's happening on the front line in grocery stores, the good that's happening in hospitals, people helping out, Chef Andre making meals around the world. There's a lot of things going on where we can focus our time and our attention. And as leaders, where we choose to put our energy and our focus is going to determine how we come out of this.
That's so true. There's so many things I've talked about recently with clients and with friends about, let's catch people doing things right. Let's look for hero stories. Because I think the companies that come out of this successfully and the individuals that come out of this successfully, it's going back to companies, for example, the company that invests in their people right now, and I know it's hard to do in many companies, the companies that invest in their clients through marketing or through product development or just being there and actively listening to them, and then the heroes. And I think the heroes are the one. And I'm not just talking about the men and women who are out there battling for us every day in foreign lands, but the Chef Andre and the people that are cooking meals. We have Sir Bruno Serrato here at the White House down here in Anaheim, California, who serves 4,000 meals to kids every single day, including now. I mean, he could easily just roll up and say, you know what, I'm going to sit back and take a deep breath, but that's not the way he's built. And it's these heroes that are doing these amazing things right now that often go under the radar, that are the folks that are going to just thrive like crazy now, and especially when this is over.
Well, I think that for everybody who's listening, where I would add just one thought to all of that
Sure.
is that we are so living outside example. So be the person that sets a really great example. If it's a new protocol, a new way of responding, but when you're living outside of example, everything's unprecedented. So let's set a precedent right now with the choices that we make of how do we adapt to our customers' needs? How do we adapt to our employees' needs, our community, our charities, our causes? And I believe that, and this is going to be maybe a little controversial. So let me just finish the thought and then you can challenge me.
We have an editor who can, no,
I think that, I think a lot of times when we're caught in a crisis, our instinct is to, well, let's just treat everybody equally. And I'm going to challenge that to say, what I really want you to do is I want you to listen to the spoken and the unspoken needs of your internal and your external folks and respond with equity instead.
Sure.
So it's not about doing the same for everything. It's about saying, what does this person or what does this situation really need from me? And just knowing that you're responding with equity. And I say that seriously because not everybody needs the same thing right now.
Right. Well, no, and you're absolutely right. In fact, I was just talking with someone the other day that I've put and I won't dive into too much detail, but I've put my clients into 4 or 5 buckets. And I don't mean to just broad brush bucket them, but we have a couple of clients that are just thriving right now. The type of industry, the grocery industry, the cleaning and sanitation and so forth. Everybody's just knocking on their door all day long. And then we have clients that are, a heartbeat away from being out of business because maybe they're in hospitality or events or whatever. It could be just the circumstantial, could be other reasons. And I can't, like you said earlier, I can't go give a workshop and then here's your invoice. Right. I'm not even invoicing my clients that are thriving right now because they're so busy being busy and taking care of really the rest of us that we'll get back to that. But yeah, you're right. We can't communicate the same way to everybody. And I think that's why what you do for a living is so fascinating to so many people. I'm going to transition a little bit here. When I talk with these families, and again, most of the people watching and listening are family-owned businesses, the number one reason that I tell people why there is divorce, why companies fall apart, why there is conflict in the home and in the business, why there's such divide between political parties and just there's so much division everywhere is, and you'll say it too, we can probably say it, in harmony, is poor communication.
Yep.
So I'm guessing that for you, do you get more of your, I don't say business, but and let's for a minute go pre-COVID, even though it's hard to remember that time, hard to remember BC before COVID. But what were some of the topics that you just knew when the phone rang, it's probably going to be one of these 3 or 4 things? Are there patterns that you see a lot when people are reaching out to you for help?
Yeah. So I think that obviously the classic, sales are down, and sales are down is never the problem. It's a symptom of something else.
Sure.
Right. And so it's the sales, it's the misaligned leadership, it's the toxic culture, it's the team dynamics are dysfunctional. And then every now and then it's the really kind of, hey, we're great, but we actually have this incredible problem. We are growing so fast, we need your help too. So that's a nice, again, a nice problem to have. But oftentimes it is when somebody says we need to invest in our people, we're not really sure how, or we've got a real challenge. And the challenge is Now it's going to be safeguarding Q3 and Q4 results. Now
Mhm.
it's going to be maintaining a culture that you worked so hard to build while people are working remotely, keeping your people engaged, continuing to problem solve. I know the buzzword right now is pivot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's adapting. And
Mhm.
then so like you, I have a whole myriad of clients, some on the brink, and then
Right.
others that are like, okay, we didn't ask for this, but we made more money in the last 2 weeks than we made all year long.
Exactly.
And so you're responding to real needs in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to put educational products out there right now, as we talked about, I think before we went on. Um, Oftentimes finding content that, you have on your website, or content from other universities or publications and associations that might be beneficial, and just trying to be a well for information and knowledge and education, and recognizing that, company A, which is thriving, and company F, which is going out of business technically, or close to, probably aren't spending a ton of time, jumping around websites and, gee, where can I find training? So we need to just get that in front of them. And those that are, somewhere in the middle, there are companies where I can't say it's business as usual, but closer to business as
Yeah,
usual, maybe because of the type of work that they're in. I want to make sure that we get some time to talk about your new book. I know it's April 28th, right? Tell us.
it is.
I know it is the steps to, yeah. Why don't you just read it to me? Again, it's called Get It.
It's called Get It. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's the communication, I think, platform for getting what it is that you want. And
Yeah.
so the title is Get It, 5 Steps to the Sex, Salary, and Success You Want.
Yeah.
And it is super irreverent, super fun, filled with a
You
ton
did
of
something
exercise.
irreverent. I find that hard to believe. I love it.
But it's my, I have to joke, it's my new baby.
Mhm.
But it really is the idea that you can get what you want. And by that, I don't necessarily mean materialistic. I mean, if you
Right.
want to start a charity, if you want to impact the world, that's still your heart's desire. But until you figure out how to become a master communicator, you can want a bunch of stuff and never make it happen. So this is like the how to get what you want.
So that's a really good question then. So how do you, with your clients or individually, let's just say, for example, let's do a little coaching session,
Sure.
AmyK with Ed. Take me through the process of how you would help me identify what it is that I want. Because I think a lot of people don't know what they want.
They don't know.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I would ask you is like let's just do low hanging fruit.
Okay.
Ed, what do you want? Just give me something you want.
Success. I'm
Okay.
going to play back. Yeah.
Sure, sure. And why do you want it?
I want to be successful in my career because I want to be able to continue to put food on the table for my family.
Okay, so let's
I
stop
want,
you right there.
okay.
So what does success in your career look like? Have you defined it?
Okay, now we're playing, right? Because yes, I have,
Yeah.
but I'll pretend like I haven't. No. Yeah, I think the answer you might get from a lot of people, and probably from me in a lot of ways too, is I think I have. But if I say I think I have, I probably haven't, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will say, I think I have. And then you ask them to give it to me in like a 2 sentence. So just tell me your definition of career success in 2 sentences.
For me, it's if I wake up every day and I love what I do and I feel like I'm making a difference and the bills are paid and I'm putting some money away for the future, then I'm
Okay.
successful.
And what does all of that get you?
Peace of mind,
Okay.
which
And what
is
does
actually
that
what I
get you?
thought about when you first asked me what I want, was peace of
Right.
mind.
And why do you want that?
Because I want to sleep at night and feel like I'm making a difference.
Okay. So now notice what you said, sleep at night and making a difference. Those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably one of your biggest drivers, because I know you, Ed,
Of course.
is that it's making a difference.
Yeah.
And so for you, realistically and authentically, to overuse that word, but authentically, yes, you want financial security, but that's not your driver. That's not your motivator.
Right.
And so for most people who are listening, they're not that clear. They're either in the family business because mom or dad asked them to be,
Mm-hmm.
they're stuck in it. They're caught on the treadmill, they're caught on the gopher wheel, or they're in a relationship that is stale. And again, not to get too personal, but I know this statistically, there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of
Sure.
marriages that are not that great.
Right.
And yet you choose to spend your life with this person, and yet you don't know how to ask for what it is that you want. So this book is really about, one, getting clear on what it is that you really want and why you want it, and then figuring out how to create connection versus power plays, both at home and at work. And then we talk about one of step 4 in the book, and again, I'm irreverent, but it's own your shit and de-stink theirs, which means you gotta own some of your baggage, your missteps, your mistakes, because we're all human. But then I give lots of techniques and tools for taking the stink out of the air when you've got friction or conflict with people that are close to you.
I love that, because you can't change their shit. You can
No.
just make it stink to you less, I guess,
Yes,
basically, right?
exactly. We teach you how to flush it.
No, I not flush it. There you go. I like that. See, irreverence is good. I like it a lot. What would you say? Let's take the marriage. You talked about that a lot, and this isn't a marriage show by any stretch, but I've heard people say that 90% of the happiness or misery in your life is going to come from the relationships around you, and the number one is your marriage in most people's case. What would you say are some of the more common pitfalls that you see? So lack of communication is very nebulous and huge, but let's say they're communicating. They're not throwing dishes at each other, communicating. And maybe that's good in some ways because it shows at least there's some passion there, right?
Yeah.
But are there some common pitfalls that you see? And you can't obviously make a broad brush statement right now that's going to save all the marriages that are listening to us right now that are struggling. But where would you typically, and again, it's situational, I get it, but where would you typically go, or what are you seeing a lot that just really comes out to you first when I say that?
So let me just do a full umbrella caveat. I am not a marriage therapist or counselor. Where I typically see the patterns come up is that one partner craves connection and another craves dominance and power. And so when you've got a mismatch, that relationship will not survive. When somebody has to be right, when somebody has to win, when somebody has to be the smarter one, rather than seeking connection, they seek power. And that will totally erode a relationship. The second thing that I see is that when you want happiness for somebody else more than they want it for themselves. So you cannot be somebody's white knight. You cannot rescue and save and fix them. You can only come to the conversation with your own state of happiness, your own sense of peace of mind or contentment, and ask or hope that, well, both. You will ask and hope that they do it for themselves. But I can't want you to be happy, Ed, more than you want it for yourself.
It's interesting. I like that a lot. It goes back to we can't change people.
No.
We can change our perception, but we can't change them. So it goes back to just flush de-stink their shit, as you say.
I think just if we go specifically on communication, so much of bad communication is on really destructive habits. So we all have our triggers. We all have things that annoy us. And so one of the things that I teach in the book is something called like the de-stink technique. And the reason that I so lay it out is because so many times we're talking about the dishwasher or the way that the toilet paper hangs, if you have any. And
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And the way that the towels are folded. And I think it's really important for couples to realize that those conversations, that's not what any of them are about.
Yeah.
It's about control, power, connectivity, and feeling like you're respected and heard. And so I lay that out in a lot of detail, but I think that what happens is, and this is probably the biggest thing of all, internally we settle and we tell ourselves, well, this is it. Like,
this is as good as it's going to get.
I've created, and it's not.
Yeah. So how does that correlate to corporate America now? I'm guessing a lot is very similar.
Yeah. So we settle for mediocrity. We say that this is as good as it gets, or we start to rest on our laurels that things aren't so bad. Or we do what I call the lame blame game. Well, it's not my fault, it's Ed's fault. And if Ed would only do this, and it's really taking back the control of when you honor the worth of your own voice, when you honor your ability to be this incredibly positive, influential, impacting person in the world, it's amazing what you can change and how quickly you can change it. And that is not me blowing smoke. I prove it over and over and over again with the work that I do.
And we take accountability too. I think part of what I'm hearing you say is oftentimes the blame game, as you say, the lame blame game, to continue to rhyme here, often happens when we just don't take accountability for our own actions. You can say something, but you can't make me feel a certain way. I'm accountable for that.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. So I have kind of a little different perspective on the word accountability. So a lot of people, when they say I take accountability for it, in our society, especially Western first world society, we have equated taking responsibility as it's your fault. So if you're accountable to it, then it must be your fault. And to really shift that definition to, if I said that I'm accountable, what I said and agreed to was I'm responsible for the care and management of either the people or the components or the situation. I'm not looking to blame anybody. I don't even have to accept the blame.
Sure.
What I'm accepting is the care and management for this. So like if you come to me and you say, hey, this went sideways, I don't start getting defensive. I don't start looking for somebody else to blame. My first response is, okay, Ed, I stepped up to say that I was going to be the caretaker and the manager of this. So how might we
How
solve this
might we? I was going
together?
to beat you. Dang it. I was going to beat you to that. I was looking at, what was it again? Yeah. How might we? I love it. I love it. You're consistent. I
This is
love
why I love what I do.
that. That's right.
You're quick.
Yeah. I love it. No, I'm learning a lot. We're just into 45 minutes in and I want to go another couple of hours, but, you talked about earlier how you like to have a book in your hand. You like the hard book rather than the electronic. What are you reading? What do you read? Who do you read? Who inspires you? Mentors you've had or have? Lots of questions.
So I have usually a couple different books going at once. And that's because I bifurcate the personal and the professional. And so I've got a couple open. One is Bulletproof Selling by G.A. Bartik. I love that book. I'm on my second read of it. It's
Nice.
just a classic, great sales book. And I think the reason that I've gone back to it is I'm just seeing with fresh eyes what it can look like as I go virtual. You know, as I start to do more online, is there a way for me to learn how to sell a little bit? So it's been a great refresher. And then I'm blanking on the author. It's Rebecca, I think, Sarnkey, don't quote me on that, but it's A Paradise Built from Hell. And
Wow.
and it's this, first of all, it's beautifully written. It's gorgeous prose. But she really talks about the power of humanity to rise from terrible events. So she talks about things such as Katrina. And it's really about how people are so resilient and so collaborative that when we are at our base worst as experiencing something collectively, we are at our best in responding to it collectively.
Yeah.
And she does a much better job of communicating that than I'm doing. But I just started that book and I'm already hooked.
Well, and I think that's perfectly said for what we're going through right now. What I'm noticing today in this COVID age that we're in is what I'm noticing in my conversations and communication with my family and my home on Zoom with clients and friends even, is we're very laser focused in our conversation. I think that we've sorted out the garbage. You know, we're not, we're that phoenix that's going to rise out of the ashes here as a country and as a community. And I firmly believe it as an economy. We always have, which tells me again, we always will. It might look different coming out of this one than in the past, but for me, we don't have those, hey, how you doing? You know, walking by in the hallway conversation now, which really just means, yeah, AmyK, I see you, but I'm on my way to a meeting. Now, AmyK, how are you doing? I'm going to stop and I'm going to listen and it's going to be authentic, which I hope for me, I'm only speaking for Ed Hart now. I hope that's going to make me a better communicator, a better listener, a better leader, a better husband, father, grandfather, as I rise out of this, because I'm realizing now, you know, this is a time for me to really kind of not focus on me. And I don't mean it in a selfish way, but focus on me even in an improvement way. How can I become a better version of me? And right now I'm just focused on the shit that matters.
And the significance of that is enormous. So
Yeah.
so when you decide, and it's not selfish, it's actually quite generous to say that if I can be a better leader and a better partner and a better grandfather, then the ripple effect of that is that the world benefits from that. I think that if we had chatted, 90 days earlier, I would have said like conversations matter, like duh, that's what I believe in. Conversation matters. But now that we're talking today, conversation matters.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we stop long enough to have meaningful, significant conversations because of the role that we play and to honor the role that other people are playing and to realize that we all have a role in this. And it's hopefully choosing a role that has a ripple effect that benefits, again, our collective humanity.
Yeah. And we're more, here's that word again. I like the word, but it is overused, authentic. Yeah. You and I are in a one-on-one conversation. If we were sitting face to face right now in a coffee shop, we'd still be having a very great conversation, but we were looking at our phones. We may have taken a couple of phone calls. We may be talking to people going around. Somebody walks into the coffee shop and it distracts us, which immediately takes us away from this. And yeah, this is 2-dimensional, whereas that's 3. But for me, this is so much more powerful because, we're literally looking at each other eye to eye, having a conversation with, I don't know about on your end, but on my end, the only distraction on my end is the phone lights up, but it's only with the time. I have no idea who it is.
No.
I'll
My
get to that later.
distractions are all turned off too. And I think that it's strange because as much as I think that I'm watching like the news feeds come in on my phone, I get this little summary report, and I don't know how it works on everybody's phone because I'm not a tech, that's not my forte.
Right.
But I get this little summary at the end of the week that says like your screen time is up or down.
Mm-hmm.
And my screen time was down by like a crazy 42%. It was like, you're not on your phone. And I'm like, because I'm Zooming. I'm
looking at a different screen now. Yeah, exactly.
It's a different screen. But this screen is so much better.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I have a Zoom happy hour tonight, and I'm doing a lot of those. And I think that, so here's a great story because I'm a storyteller. So I'm a member of my own mastermind. So I practice what I preach. I run a mastermind group. I'm a member of mine. My mastermind group is called Lady Balls. We're all female speakers. We all have different topics, but we're talking about the fact that we are having conversations on Zoom that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So like one of my mastermind members, she had a 2.5, not exaggerating, a 2.5 hour conversation with her brother. And she's like, we haven't spoken for more than like 30 minutes in the last year. But there was something about Zoom and seeing each other that just brought the two of them together. And I think we're going to hear a lot of these stories where people, again, this is tragic. I have had personal loss. We've had a family member on the front lines in New York City, ER doctor. He passed away last week. So our pain is real. But I feel like on the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of good as well. And I just so believe that.
I think we're longing for, I'll use your word you used earlier, and it's in your book, intimacy. And it's not just the intimacy that we think of that's irreverent.
Right.
But that intimacy of intimate relationship, the into me you see, as we've heard it defined. Yes. And I think that that's what this creates. We were talking in a Bible small group on Zoom last night. And one of the individuals, my wife and I are in a group, and one of the individuals and one of the couples said, let's talk a little bit about who you've connected with through this that maybe you wouldn't have connected with. So you hit it right on the head. I've got friends that I worked with maybe 20 years ago, or family members that I don't talk to, even siblings that I don't really communicate with. Not that there's anything wrong, but we're all just so dang busy. And not that we're not busy now, it's just a different kind of busy. And, my calendar, I have my calendar printed out on my wall over there for my wife to see, so she can tell not only when I'm in here doing these and having meetings, but I have a little asterisk next to the ones where I'd love to have her join me. Because, it's like now we're having conversations and communication with friends and family. And, last night for my birthday, we had all the kids on and they sang happy birthday, and the grandkids on the screen blew the candles just like the ones in the room with me did. And it's stuff that we're going to remember forever. That's just so priceless.
Yeah. And, so first of all, you're giving me goosebumps because I just so believe in that. I think that when we look at the children's experience, the young adults experience, like what you just did with your family, they're going to remember this by how we all responded. Yeah. So if mom and dad were crazy stressed out and angry with each other and filled with anxiety, they're going to remember this is an extraordinarily difficult time in the household. If the household is calm, doesn't mean that you invalidate some of your other feelings, but if overall the household, the business leaders are calm and credible and leading with certainty and empathy, they're going to look back at this and say, that was a good time. That was a really good time.
Last week, my wife and I actually sat down on Zoom with the pastor of our church, and we have a long history of, the rising out of the ashes. Our previous pastor had taken his life about 1.5 years ago. So this pastor we have now has really led us through some really difficult times. And again, we're in difficult times as a world that he's again leading us through. But that topic came up, and he talked about two things. He said, his name's Josh Crane. And if people have watched or listened to my podcast, it's the one that's actually airing now that we just put.
I was just going to say, you just chatted with him.
Yeah, we did. And he's an amazing man who has, for late 30s, tremendous wisdom. But he said a couple of things that really stood out to me. And you've said those things basically in different words now. That he said that number one, the second most important role of a parent is to teach their children. The most important role is to enjoy your children. And then he took it a step further and really touched on what you just said, how we as parents respond to this around our kids, and grandparents in my case as well, is how they're going to remember us. They're going to remember, hey, during that COVID crisis back in 2020, when I didn't get to go to my own graduation and I didn't get to finish my class and I missed my baseball season and didn't get to do all these things that I didn't get to play with my friends in the cul-de-sac. Mom and dad were there. We played games every night. We watched movies together. Dad didn't work, 12-hour days. Yeah, he may have, but he came downstairs for lunch every day and he sat and did homework with me. Or I could be the dad that's just like, don't bother me. I'm stressed out. My clients are, hemorrhaging right now, and I got to just focus on them. And nothing wrong with focusing on my clients, obviously, but they're going to remember this down the road on how we are now. And I like how you put it as well. It's how do we show up for them right now?
Yeah, it is. It is how we show up. And I think that one of the things that we have to remember is that it's a choice. And
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people listening right here are feeling inundated. And I think that they're like, well, that's easier said than done. Yeah, it is easier said than done.
Yeah.
And it's still a choice.
Mm-hmm. As we start to wrap, I know we're just scratching the surface on so many topics. It's like shareware in the old day, we'll give them a little bit now, and then if you want more, buy the book. No, I'm not going to say that. And certainly that is important. And I do encourage everyone to pick up all of your books. Everything you've done, I've read, and
Thank you.
and you're right. It does feel like I'm just in conversation with you because you write the way you speak. And I think those are the authors I love reading. You see some of the books behind me. These are my favorite books. And these are ones that I read because I'm a very visual person, which has some really negative things as well. Like I see that COVID little diagram on TV with the little thing sticking out, and it gives me really horrible feeling inside. And I don't know if
Yep.
it's the empathy of people I know, like yourself, who have lost loved ones, or if I'm just too visual. I don't know, but I am. And so that's just part of the problem I have, is that I'm a little too visual. But as you write your books and I read them, I can see the stories, I can see the people you're describing, and that's what makes it more powerful. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Thank you for that feedback. That makes me feel good. That makes my heart feel good.
Well, you're really, really good at what you do. You're obviously in the right profession, doing the right thing. Couple questions that I always end up. First of all, one of the handling the logistics of this. How can my audience reach you? What's the best way to find you on social media or books, or where you're going to be speaking? Where should they go?
So the easiest is our website, which is just 4 letters, my name, AmyK, so AmyK.com. And you know this, Ed, but for those who are being introduced to me for the first time, one of my core values is generosity. And
Mm-hmm.
so you'll see on our homepage all sorts of free resources and tools. So our conversation prep planner. So if you've got a critical conversation on the horizon, that's a great tool for you. It's free. We have all kinds of things around sales and managing up and having tough conversations, lots of free stuff. You can follow me on Instagram if you are under the age of 70 and you are an
There you go.
Instagram user.
That's right. 70 is the age now. Okay, good. I better get with it.
My parents are on it, so it's
Awesome.
good.
I love it.
But yeah, so you can follow me at AmyK Hutchens. Again, tons of free stuff. And then, so my book is coming out April 28th. I'm really asking for everybody to support that launch on Amazon, but it's a really easy support because the ebook's only 99 cents. So I'm not asking that much.
Yeah, there you go. You're not getting wealthy. They say if you're writing a book to make money, or you're doing a podcast or recording a song to get money, go do something else, because you're doing it because it's a passion.
So this is not about that. This is about truly getting it out there, telling everybody you can get all this stuff from 99 cents.
And we'll promote it. We'll put this on our social media as well. We'll put it in the message notes for this particular podcast, how to reach you, how to get the book. That. Yeah, of course. Second to last question is, there's a family business leader right now who is working with his family or her family. And I'm taking a bunch and putting them into one person, like you've talked about, you do in your books, who has had those difficult conversations, who's 4 weeks into this crisis right now, maybe 5 weeks in by the time we air this next week. What advice would you have on how to continue to communicate with the people that they've had to let go? Either they've laid off, or they've furloughed, or they're just cutting the hours. You don't want to just not talk to them and communicate with them. Do you have any suggestions? I'm sure you probably have clients that are in that situation as well. Any suggestions you have for how to communicate? Maybe not word for word because it's different on every case. Any just thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would go back to that, how might I best serve?
Hmm.
And I think that one of the things that is difficult, let's just be really candid, is that you're also coming from a legal standpoint.
Sure.
So you don't want to get on and promise a job that may or may not be there. You don't want to say anything that could come back to haunt you. And yet, when you speak from the heart, no pun intended,
Uh,
you can talk about how difficult this is, but I'm going to warn you not to use platitudes. I'm going to warn you to probably say less than you've ever said before,
mm,
but to have those words be weighty. So for instance, and I'll give an example. I had a client recently say, well, what doesn't kill us will make us stronger.
yeah.
And I was like, well, technical foul, this is killing us.
Yeah.
So let's not
And
use
how am I
straight
getting stronger?
platitudes.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to quote anybody right now.
Yeah.
We just need to show up and say, this is hard. This is hard. This is
Yeah.
painful. And I don't even have necessarily the right words. But I know that the words matter. So I'm just going to speak from the heart. And here's what I have to say. I also think in reverse, it's really important that as leaders right now, as we continue to stay in touch with people that might be working part-time, that might be furloughed, that you may think about hiring back, is that you need to listen to really their unspoken needs as well. So when somebody's like yelling or somebody's angry, the unspoken need is they're feeling out of control. They're feeling vulnerable. They're feeling like they're not being heard, listened, or understood. And to remember that. So before you respond, just listen for that unspoken need about what it is that they may not be saying verbally, but that they're crying out for.
Yeah. That's awesome. I appreciate that. That's such great advice because, it's firsthand experience for me right now with my team and also many of the clients that I'm working with. And everybody's in a same situation, but handling it differently. And I
Correct.
love say less. I think that's great. Any other thing that you'd like to get out that we didn't talk about before I ask you my final question?
Final. Go
All
for
right,
it.
let's do it. We've already said, and as you know, the name of the podcast is From the Heart. And you've listened, you've told me to a couple of these. So, my final question, AmyK Hutchens, right now, what's in your heart?
Gratitude and service. It's honestly, it's so simple for me right now. I wake up, what am I grateful for? How am I going to serve? I go to bed, and right before I go to bed, I say, what did I do that was of service today? And what am I grateful for that happened today? And it is the start and the finish of every single day right now.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Keep that spirit, keep that attitude, and what recession, right? So, yeah. AmyK, thank you so much for your time. I hope we
Thank
get to
you,
do this
Ed.
again soon. And I'm guessing the next time we talk, you'll be coming to Fullerton and speaking to our family business members. And I really hope we can
I
make
would
that
love
happen
to.
soon.
But until then, cyber safe hugs.
There you go. Cyber safe hugs, LDH, right? Long distance hugs. All right. Well, thank you
Absolutely.
very much. I can't tell you again how much I appreciate your time today.
Much love, sir. Total respect. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.